I think because we have so many people that are here already, we can just get started right at 6. So we'll just wait 1 more minute and then we can get started. I'm sure more people will trickle on in too.
Yeah. I see you have opinions on that cat. Oh wait, no, you have opinions on me being here right now.
Well, if you are here already, welcome to our Introduction to JavaScript event, our workshop. We're going to get started right away so we don't waste any time. My name is Alyssa. I am the campus manager for 4Geeks Academy Miami. So if you are interested in learning more about our school or talking to our admissions team, we have their number right here in the chat. It's the very first message. I'm going to copy and paste it again so that if you're new to the meeting, you can see it as well. You can text the word success to this number right here, 786-416-6640. And we have live admissions representatives that are available to call or text with you 24/7, and they're real people. Some interesting things, fun things about 4Geeks. We have unlimited mentorships. We have unlimited career support. We usually provide 3 to 4 different events, either such as this one where you learn new skills, or sometimes we do career events, networking, happy hours, different things to engage you guys and give you guys a fun time and teach you new things. We have 7 or 10 locations in 7 different countries. So we're a huge community of developers. We have locations in North, South, and Central America, and as well as Europe. We've graduated over 2,000 people since 2015 when we opened, and we all are in our Slack channel and always helping each other as we build new projects and learn new things. So take note of that number there so that you guys have it if you want to text admissions after the workshop is done. And teaching our workshop today is our instructor, Shane Bell. He is the instructor for one of our full stack cohorts. He's been coding for quite some time. He's a very talented coder. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him, and he is going to teach you guys JavaScript tonight. Shane?
Hey there. Thank you for the introduction.
when you're dealing with floats, this is so if we add 0.1 and 0.2, you expect to get 0.3. Wow. Unfortunately, oh, 1 second. Might help if I actually type what I'm saying. Unfortunately, due to the nature of how computers deal with floating point numbers or decimal numbers, you lose some accuracy. There aren't a lot of these. You will sometimes run into this. It's always exciting to find a floating point error like this. But it's pretty much built into how floating point numbers work on computers. Because all numbers are represented as binary values. There is some mild inaccuracy with floats. So let's see, we've done strings, we've done numbers. Boolean value. Boolean is a very funny word. But Boolean value is either true or false. And they're used in evaluating a lot of things. So we'll get into exactly how to use Booleans later on in this lesson, actually probably during the project, because you'll be coding along with me. So the next two types of variables are going to be arrays. And an array is just a series of other values. So you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's, in this case, this is an array that has the elements, or these 7 numbers in it. You can also you can store anything you want in an array. You can even store other variables in it, and even arrays. The arrays are always denoted by these square braces. And when you are accessing individual elements, you access them again with the square braces. And then you basically you count. Let's just switch up the numbers. So in this array, this is an array with 8 elements. You've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so those are the 8 elements. I mind flooded myself there. So if you wanted to get the element, actually let's do it like this. If you want to get the element at the first index, you put a 0 in those square braces. So the first element is going to be a 1. If you wanted to get the element in the 6th index, that would be a 7. I should have probably stuck with the original numbering convention where I started origin 0 here. There, now the 6th element is 6. So in almost every programming language, when you are dealing with an array, let's actually do it this way. You are going to be starting, or you basically count from 0. The one exception that I know of that is not this way is Lua, which is a scripting language that was originally built for data processing, I think. And it has an origin of 1 for its arrays. So in Lua, the first element is at origin, is at index 1. And what I did here at the end of these lines, those double slashes are make everything on the rest of that line into a comment, which means the JavaScript interpreter just ignores what's there, and you can use that to put notes for yourself. The flip side is that if I wanted to put more code after this, it will not work, or that code will be ignored by the interpreter and will not run. So we've gone through strings, numbers, Boolean values. Now we get into some of the more abstract data types, or the more abstract types of variables that you'll have. This one is called an object. An object is denoted by squiggly braces. And well, let's take a real life object. So for example, I've got tape measure here. This tape measure has a number of properties. The first of all, its color is yellow. So let's start writing this out in our the brand on this is Stanley. So it might help if I actually put in Stanley in my quote marks. And yeah, we can just keep on doing that. What an object is a series of keys and values. So let's just first start out by actually, let's name this in a way that is sensible and can be read later. So if we console.log this, that's actually not hugely helpful. But what this object allows us to do is we can access these values within the object, either with the square brace notation, or we can access it with what's called dot notation. And dot notation is basically the name of your object dot your property. And then let's actually add in another, well, let's do max length. And that'll be 12 feet, but we're just going to use an integer value there. Then we'll add one more property. Is locked. So if you're looking at a tape measure, it's got the switch on it, which if you press down the switch, the tape measure gets locked. And if you release the switch, it's unlocked and your tape measure can retract. So that's actually a nice example of a Boolean value. The state or the Boolean value is locked, will be true when my not very good tape measure is locked, and will be false when it's unlocked. And we're going to leave it unlocked because otherwise it might get stuck, I'm sure. So there. Let's swap this up to dot notation. Because you rarely need to use not dot notation, or you rarely need to use the square bracket notation for that. Yeah. Objects allow you to structure your data. You can also use them to do some fancy things. And actually, some of the groundwork that I did for this project relies on the fact that you can store a lot of different things inside objects. Well, let's hit run. And now we know that the console can tell that we have a yellow Stanley tape measure with a max length of 12, and it's not locked. So there are a couple of reasons that you'd want to use an object over an array, or vice versa. An array, you can continue adding elements, and you know what order they're going to be in always. As long as you're adding elements to the end, they will be added. They will continue to be added to the end. As long as whenever you're mashing together your arrays or sticking other things, then you know where they're going to end up. With objects, if you have a lot of values that are associated with one thing, they can be really helpful for allowing you, like this tape measure. We've got 4 different value or 4 different keys on it now. I mean, you could make an array tape measure. I said array, not object. And then in there, you can have a series of key value pairs. So first of all, it might help if there. And then you could do it this way. This gets to be a bit of a headache. I will have, if you are handling large amounts of data like this, that doesn't mean that there aren't places and pieces of software that do this. Cough, cough, channel advisor. Yeah, like you can get the same functionality roughly out of a tape measure, out of an array that you can out of an object, but an object will have ease of use as long as you're not trying to store a lot of values. It's also much easier to go over an array and then do the same thing to each of them, each thing inside the array. So if you need to iterate over something, which is what that's called, you use an array. If you have a lot of finicky data, probably use an object. We've gotten through 4 of the 6 types of values. that exist in JavaScript. The next two are funky. This one is my undefined. Oh, sorry, my null. We'll do my null first. And null just means that there's nothing there. You might think, oh, hey, I can use 0 for that. Nope, 0 is something. Null is nothing. So yeah, null is a special value. It's one of the reserved keywords in JavaScript. Another one is undefined. So the reason I'm not putting or assigning anything to undefined is you can assign the value undefined, but also anytime that you declare a variable but you don't actually store anything in it, it's going to be undefined. The same thing for any property on an object that doesn't exist. So, for example, I just tried to access a property on the tape measure called isDigital, but that doesn't exist. So the JavaScript interpreter returns that value is undefined. String, number, Boolean, array, null, undefined, and that gets all 6 of your basic JavaScript data types, which is fun. And we've gone over arrays. We have not gone over string concatenation. String concatenation, you'll be using it all the time. So normally when you are using the plus symbol, you think, oh, let's add 2 numbers together. In JavaScript, that can be true. You can also use the plus operator for an operation called concatenation. Concatenation is basically a fancy word for sticking 2 things together. So the really, Griselle? She's staring up at me and talking. So, I mean, you probably have seen the you probably have no, it's collate on printers. Never mind. Scratch that example. You could also use this concatenation operation on arrays, and it would help if I actually type in my array for once today. That's actually treating it as a string. Yep, that is also treating it as a string. Okay, so don't use the plus sign for that. Is it concatenate in JavaScript? It is not concatenate in JavaScript. Oh. This is one of the downsides of working in a lot of different languages. Is going back and forth can sometimes, like if you see me today while with JavaScript, do you ever see me typing the typing print That's because I'm thinking in Python, which is another programming language, and also honestly a lot of fun. And it's just something about how you write Python that's it just feels like speaking to me sometimes. Let's see. Oh, it's concat in JavaScript. Yeah. Okay. So concatenation, it basically sticks two things together, or sticks them together at an end. We've dealt with index. So the words that are about to come out of my mouth are not strictly true, but they are close to true enough that if you are thinking about, or if you're talking about JavaScript like this, you're only going to be wrong in ways that do not matter. Everything in JavaScript is an object. So, for example, functions are objects. Function being basically a series of instructions. Let's see. Arrays are objects. Although that is a function that generates arrays and not actually, I mean, strings are object. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's going to be 21. So I hope I did my math right. 23. Oh, well. That would have been a really nifty trick if I got it right the first time. So yeah, like strings have properties. Oops, let's see. I want to give that. And they have functions. So in this case, the function split, just when you provide it an empty string as an argument, will take your string apart into individual characters. If you wanted to just split it apart into words, you would tell it to split apart at the space character. Now, you can't really do this to numbers, but you can do this to variables that hold number. No, you can't even do it to variables that hold numbers, I think. Oh, you can. Never mind. So yeah, you can basically treat everything like an object in JavaScript. There's probably a property, and there are probably functions that are attached to everything that you're doing. So the reason I'm bringing up this one is something that we're going to probably be using a lot, is the length of an array is a property on the array. So this array, my array, has 8 elements in it, which when we console.log myArray.length, you'll see that we get 8 elements. Okay. We don't really need to use math.random, but actually math.random is fun. I may have a really weird idea of fun. It might help if I also type whole words where whole words are required. Now, I can keep on hitting Control Enter or run. And you'll notice that this number that's logged is just different every time. Math.random just gives you a random number between 0 and 1. One of the patterns that you will see a lot is this. And then what math.floor does, actually, let me break this out into separate lines so that it's much easier to read. Math.floor just rounds down. So what we're doing is, let's work from the inside out, is we're taking the length of the array, in this case it's 8, and we are multiplying it by a random number between 0 and 1. That's going to give us a value with a lot of decimal places, but then we're rounding that down. So our end value here is going to be some number between 0 and 8. 0 and 7, and it'll be inclusive. And what that means is that it can include 0 and it can also include 7. So again, let's type all the characters I intend to. And this one is exclusive. So no matter how many times we run this line of code here, we will never get 8. And we will also never get 0. We can get arbitrarily close to it, like we could get like 7.9 or beating, but we will never actually get 8 or 7. So when we round that down, or sorry, 0 or 7, 0 or 8, when we round that down, we will get a number that points to a random element of this array. So first of all, let's start off by running this to show you that, it does in fact appear to work properly. So, and then let's move this to a separate variable. So now we can go look at my array and then provide it the random index. And now when we, that semicolon was bad. Now we can let's make these strings so that you can actually see what's going on. We're going to just make the array a bit shorter so that I don't have to do as much typing. So every time I rerun this script, we get a different letter. And we can show that there. So the item at index 0 is A, the item at index 1 is B, 2 is C, 3. Okay. I was about to I had a moment there where I was like, that's not random. As a heads up, random is not very random, or at least it doesn't feel very random. Okay, so yeah, we've gone through the basic what you need to run JavaScript, except for one thing. We need conditionals to continue on. And I mean, there's also some parts of the API that we'll be running through. But yeah, so our first conditional is if. And so the structure of an if statement is like this. All this stuff that I just highlighted is optional. You don't actually need it in your basic if statement. So what goes in these parentheses here is called the predicate. A predicate has to evaluate to a truthy or falsy value. So we will do this in a suitably vague way. Let's comment out these quickly. So first of all, if the predicate is true, or if this statement is true, then it goes straight into this block of code and runs it, and then skips everything else. Then we can set the predicate to false. So it's going to skip this first one. And then what does exclamation point do is it's a logical inversion. So it is turning this false value into a true value. So this is evaluating as true, and then we're running this block of code. And then let's okay. So let's quickly go back over this because I changed things up. So this predicate statement is now evaluating whether this variable is true. Triple equals is a strict evaluation operator in JavaScript. You can also do double equals, but that gets funky fast. The triple equals is what you almost always want to use. So yeah, this second statement is seeing if this variable predicate is equal to the value false. And then finally, because we set predicate to something that is neither true nor false, if we run it, we run the contents of the else statement. And additionally, you can chain as many else ifs as you want. I mean, it does get unwieldy, but you know, you can do it. Frankly, there are a lot of things that you can do in programming that you might not want to do, but you know, you can do them. I mean, the programming is basically giving a set of ultra specific instructions. I mean, it's just like spellcasting. You're writing a whole bunch of incredibly specific instructions, and if you get something wrong, you let all the magic smoke out. And you don't want to let the magic smoke out. Yeah. So that's the quick lecture. I say quick. This was not my best time through that lecture, but we're going to get on to the actual project now. Let's start with this. I'm going to toss this into the chat. Yes. Sorry, I don't actually get a ding when messages show up in chat, so I actually have opened this up so that I can see it more easily. Yep. So yes, Edgar, you did get it right. It is concat. And yes, semicolons are optional. And you can use them to force an end of a line. So the interpreter, when it sees a semicolon, it assumes that's the end of the line and that anything else is on another line, which is a thing that you will need to use sometimes. But anyways, I've prepped a lesson or a project for today. If you scroll down to on the page that I just linked, there will be an open in Gitpod button. So Gitpod, actually, to get started with Gitpod, I kind of hate that that I just said that, but whatever. To get started with Gitpod, Gitpod is a incredibly useful tool for writing code. Getting code that you are going to be running on a server somewhere to run the same way exactly on your computer can be a bit of a hassle. I have, in the past, probably just the past year, spent way too many hours trying to get things running on a Windows machine that run perfectly on Linux. I mean, there's a reason that I keep a bottle of ibuprofen next to my desk. There's a reason that I have an Ubuntu partition. Like, I can boot my computer into a Linux partition. It's just useful to have that around. But anyways, what Gitpod does is this. You click this open in Gitpod thing, and cool. Okay. And what it does is it builds you a workspace. It also does not remember my Zoom preferences. There was also a link provided to you ahead of time. That link is the same link that is on the Gitpod button. So yeah, this project is built on the 4Geeks Academy vanilla JS template. 4Geeks Academy has a ton of templates. So, like their React template, and most of them, if not all of them, have open in Gitpod buttons of various types. So the one that this is based off of is the vanilla JS hello template. You'll see that this FAQ looks very familiar. But yeah, you can just, like, if you want to, like, get some free templates, you can just navigate to their GitHub account, and there's a use this template button on a lot of their stuff. And use this template is great. It just lets you make a project that's based off of that one. But I could and have taught complete lessons on just GitHub. It's a great piece of tool, yes. It is a great tool. So anyways, let's see. Everybody should have this up in their browser. If not, I can step through this again. Also, this Gitpod button here, the green one, that is provided by a plugin, a Chrome plugin that just adds that button to all GitHub pages. So hi, Grisel. 1 second. This is incredibly important. Oh, there. Cats. They're super important. Yeah. Let's see. This project, I mean, it looks kind of intimidating. You've got a lot of files. You've got this license file, MIT license, which everything that I've added works with that license. The only real thing, cat. There. No, pause off the keyboard, cat. Pause off the keyboard. Yes, I want to reopen that writing workspace. Everybody, welcome to Life with a Cat. Let's see. I've still got the Zoom. I've got 2 browsers. So when you start this, it will open up this. Let's do that. It'll open up this browser. You'll have the welcome page. And if over here on the left, you click the arrow next to the SRC folder, everything we really need to do is going to be taking place in app.js. You can also open index.html to give you an idea of the structure of this page. And room.js is going to be useful for reference, but we're not actually going to be coding in it. So just as a quick thing, these first 8 lines are okay. So what they're doing is they are saying to the JavaScript interpreter, because this is slightly more complicated than JavaScript just in the browser, is we want to import these files. We want to have access to these files in this file. That's all import statements are doing. So in this case, we're importing or the room data is being imported from room.js. And if you look at room.js, you'll see that there's a variable here called room data. It is an absurdly large object. And then at the end of this file, I am exporting room data. We don't really need to know how exactly that works for now. Yeah. So what I got set up here is we have a file. It already does some of the magic for you. But none of these functions are implemented yet. And I went over functions very briefly, but what a function is just it is a series of, or it's basically code that you want to be able to call. So actually here, let's start off by rewriting the output function. So functions begin either with function like this. Actually, let's comment it. So we're going to start with defining a variable called out, and then we are going to set it to this from the original code there. So Ooh, get out is doing that thing. And you'll notice that when you save things, it automatically refreshes this browser. It's wonderful. So we're going to rewrite this to be more readable. So to translate what I wrote here is okay. There's a bug in there. So if the output area is equal, or sorry, if the output areas, the property inner HTML is basically just the contents of that tag. So, there. Hey, look. Let's make that valid JavaScript again. One second. No. So what I originally wrote there, let's comment this out so that I can step through that. It was actually honestly kind of silly. So we are looking at an element. In this case, we're getting a specific element of this web page with the ID output. So specifically, we are looking at this tag here. Then we're referring to the inner HTML, which is basically just the contents on line 75 here, which it thankfully did not auto-format. And then if that is equal to this variable here, when we yeah, that's I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking. This this sentence here, this structure here, is called a ternary operator. They are they're a great way to write stuff in line, or to write conditional statements in line. They can also be incredibly hard to read. And also we can just write this in a better way. Assuming, we don't. And there. So what we're doing here is we are declaring a variable. This variable is the result of the function document.getElement by ID. So we are finding an element in the page by that has the ID output. And then we are setting the inner HTML, or the contents of that tag, to be the text that's provided by this function, or into the argument of this function. So if we look at the look function here, it calls the function output with the argument look not implemented yet. So let's, yeah, so when we click any of these buttons here, you'll see that none of these functions are implemented. And doing that. Yeah, I will futz about with the Oh, the HTML later. Another fun thing is if you go up into the browser bar here and then add $debug. I set it so that you can actually see these clickable zones. And frankly, it's going to be useful to debug stuff that we write. Oh, now did not want that. I wanted to actually, let's just make that smaller. So if we look at the room data, you'll notice that I have this object set up in an aggressively nested setup. In fact, we could in fact, there is an error on line 5 and line 13 and line 45 and line 48 because I wrote this and then didn't actually test it. Room data objects. Okay, so if you look at line 5, you'll see there's this magic here. Because an object can store other objects, you can have these aggressively nested objects. So, for example, the property room data objects.note.has been taken refers to, first of all, this variable, the property here. Let's see. Not phone, it's not fruit, it's not poster. This property here. So we're at room data.objects.note. And then dot has been taken refers to this Boolean value. You don't have to nest objects this deeply. This was largely done in the mornings before I had completely consumed my coffee. And in fact, it would have probably been better if I just removed one level of all of this. And then it would have looked, well, it would have been a lot less aggressively nested. But let's undo that so that you guys have the same code as me. So, and let's move this over here. So we've got the data that we're referring to. And we've got 4 functions to finish up in 45 minutes. So let's start with, oh, I also wrote a useful helper function. It's called getElementUnderMouse. It's and also doAction is another one. But yeah, basically, let's look at this function here, the doAction. So doAction is called whenever you click on this window. And And that is some of the stuff that is going on between lines 77 and 80 and 88. But yeah, do action accepts a target as an argument. So anything that is in the parentheses in a function in JavaScript like this is called an argument. So we start by setting a variable called action here, and that's equal to the ID of whatever one of these is selected. That's some of the HTML magic here. These are actually radio buttons. So if I said if I inspect this, and then I just remove all the classes, and then I do the same here, you'll see that this is just one of those radio buttons. But yeah. So yeah, the action figures out which of these is selected. And then it goes through a series of conditionals, and then it runs the appropriate function. Oh, what? Okay, so on line 50, if the action is equal to look, so if look is selected, then it looks at the target or it runs the look function. If it's take, it runs the take function. If it's use, it runs the use function, and if it's speak, it uses the speak function. Okay. So, and then the output function just outputs the text to this area underneath here. So let's get to starting with look. Okay. Gitpod is being exciting today. So let's look at room.js. So we've got access to room data. So since looking at something, actually, we do have a fancy look, as well as a fancy use and a fancy take. So those all have to take into account that we are going to have to pass the target into them. So let's start out with, oh, actually, no, we don't even have to do the fancy things. This one is super straightforward because look is passive. So yes, I will want to overwrite that in a second. So we're going to look at room data, the objects. And here we're going to get into the square brace notation. The target is just going to be the name of the property that we want, because I'm clever and I wrote it that way. And then that should actually just be the entirety of the look function. We can test this by breaking things. Objects. When I say break things, I mean I failed to type the entire word. Room data objects. Targets. You know, let's output target and see if I actually, okay, yeah, that target is correct. So room data objects target look. So let's do some. Let's see what happens here. Oh. Oh, okay. So what we're finding is that monitor is undefined. So, and that's because I called it computer. Well, we can fix this one of two ways. And it's probably easier to just fix it in room.js, where on line 3, you replace computer with monitor. And then, hey, look. We suddenly can update the look function to access room data, the objects, and then we have the square brace notation there because we are feeding the variable target into this output. And then we're telling it to access the .look thing. And then let's okay. So we don't want to make this a function. But we can now click around. It is going to be a bit wonky on the monitor. But we can solve that with a conditional. So we're going to declare a variable called target look. The reason we're doing this is we just want something that's readable. And then if type of actually, first of all, let's actually show you what the type of target look is. Are you? Okay. If that. Okay. Cool. We can see something fancy here. If we're outputting the type of, so we're type of is data type. It will look at the data type of the variable that you feed it, and then print that out as a string. So we know that monitor is a function posters look is a string, notes look is a string, fruits look is a string, and phones look is a string. So we can use this in our conditional. So if the type of target look is a function, we want to output we can actually just do it this way. And then in any other case, we want to just output target look. Yes, I want to overwrite this. So we can see that this person wants a better job if you click the poster. Those are some random letters and numbers. If we click on the fruit, we get the description there. And then if we click on the phone, we get surprised that people still use landlines. But if we look at the monitor, and that should be, these two lines are backwards. I should have taken another look at this before or after I had coffee this morning. But the lines that I switched were lines 6 and line 8. Because what's happening here is if the node has been taken, when you interact with a monitor, the toasters are going to be gone. Oh yeah. Let's see. Now we can actually wow, nothing in this app deals with just numbers. I mean, we can fix that. I mean, it won't have any anything, but if you go over to room.js at line 28, hit enter. And then get confused by this looks like there are about 3 pieces of fruit in there. So we can have a number of fruit in there. And then we could change line 31 to be a function like the use over here. And I will leave that as an exercise for later. And then have that every time you click fruit with use, have that decrement or have that adjust the number of fruit that are remaining, and eventually it returns a different piece of text if you're out of fruit. Yeah. Okay. So we've got look implemented. You know. And honestly, we could actually do some banana. There. I misspelled banana this morning before I had my coffee. That's exciting. Yeah. So the look function, super straightforward. The take function is honestly basically the same, except we want to. So if you scroll up to line 10, you'll see that there's an array, or there's an object called GameState. We are going to add a property to that and call it inventory. And inventory is going to be an array. And we're going to leave it as an empty array initially. What we're going to do is we're going to just store arbitrary objects in the inventory. So first of all, we want to see if we already have the item in our inventory. So if game states dot inventory, I know I used this function earlier. It's not for each, it's not that one. And you cast something to an array. So, okay. Includes. We were looking on take. So if, because this is an array, it will have all the methods and properties of an array. So we're going to ask this array if it includes our target. And what the includes function does is it sees if there is an element of the array that is equal to the thing that you are looking for. And if that's the case, it returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. So we've got what happens if, and we're also going to figure out what happens if the item is not in the array. And then we're going to declare a variable on line 39 called out. It's just going to be an empty string for now. And that's what we're going to be passing to output. We're not passing the function output to output because I'm pretty sure doing that would actually explode the universe. Either that or force me to teach people recursive functions, which you can get into a lot of trouble really quickly with. And I would highly recommend that you learn them because they are incredibly useful tools for solving some problems, but it is not a day one thing. So if our inventory includes the target, we just want to say that out equals, so we're assigning out to be out equal to the string it already is. And then let's see, is take always a string? Take's not always a string. So we actually have to do one more thing. So we have to check the type of the target. So if it's a function, and then we can just copy this code from here and then replace the look with take. And let target take to keep the keep that. Okay, so let's go back over what I did there. As I click the overwrite button, we adopted the same idea from line 30 here, where we set up a variable that was the element from the room data object that we wanted to look at. Now we checked if it was a function, and if it is a function, then we run that function. Otherwise, and then we're going to actually put the contents of that function onto the out string. So we'll do that. So out will be equal to out plus the output of the function. Otherwise, we want out to be equal to out plus this, but not a function. Okay. So then we want to actually, let's just move this to after that conditional, because we don't actually need to see if the item is included in our inventory until, or like we don't need to run that function until after we know that the item is in our inventory. So, okay, if the item is in our inventory, then we're just going to add onto the out string. We're going to concatenate that with you already have this item. Otherwise, we're going to say that you take the item, but we also want to add this item into our inventory. So we go to GameState.inventory, and then we are going to use a function called push. What push does is it just adds a new element to an array. It adds it to the end of the array. So if you're looking at the array, it's like the stuff on the right end. You can push stuff onto the right end, and then you can pop stuff off the right end, I believe. Yeah, because push and pop are first in, first out. So yeah. So we want to push our item onto the array. So we already have the item set up. And then you take this item, even though it isn't yours. Because this is an adventure game. And adventure games are predicated on, as I go and use my $5 vocab word, are predicated on taking things randomly from your environment and applying it to other random items in your environment. I had forgotten that I had set it up so that when you take the computer, it doesn't fit in your inventory. Oh, and then if you click the note, you notice that it says, wait, is that a password? Unfortunately, the use function is not implemented yet, but we can do that. We've dealt with arrays and whatnot. So Use and speak are actually both going to be just straightforward copies of look. Except instead of look, it'll be target use, or sorry, target. Yeah, actually, is use going to be straightforward? Yes. There's nothing. Ooh, actually, no, there's nothing special about use. We don't really want to change up how we're doing things because otherwise, we get into refactoring, and believe you me, I could be refactoring this for a good long while. So we have target use. And then over here, we again replace that with target use. And then I should have just used find and replace there, but frankly, that works. And then we can do the same thing with speak. So and then lose track of where we are on the page. There's speak, and then we just need to replace target speak here. And then targets. There goes my cursor again. Target speak there. And then target speak there. And then we have the bare bones adventure game framework here. Now, of course, let's. Oh yeah, you can talk to the phone. You pick up the handset and talk to the nice dial tone for a while. And it does have some state that updates. This was just a very basic example of some of the things that you could do with JavaScript. There is more, like this is a reasonable framework that you could build on top of if you really wanted to use it for that. If you're not interested in making games, there are a ton of other things that you could do with JavaScript. I honestly mostly picked this because it was nice and visual. And then we take this and then we crash the program. So basically anytime that this happens, that means that okay. So this is a function. Oh, use expects a. So what's happening here is this error is saying that, hey, this property is undefined. But what's really happening is we have a variable div that's undefined. Like I haven't set up div, which means that we have to go to, this was use. So if we go back down to the function use, which should be somewhere around line 59, it needs an argument. And that div is going to be, let's see, how did I write this? Use div. So that div, I should have named this better, is going to be target use. So here, on line 63 in the if this is a function, we're going to pass it an argument. And that's going to be document dot and we're going to just quickly get element by ID is what we need. So there are a number of ways to get elements from a page. Like if you look here on my line 80, you'll see document.querySelector. On line 99, I have query selector all. On line, where's Al? Really? On line 25, I have get element by ID. All of these do similar things. And that is they just point to objects on a page. Some of them, like query selector, relies on JavaScript magic. So we go back to our use function, and we're going to get an element by ID, and we want to get the target item. And this is what that function is expecting. So if we take this this password and then we use it on the computer doesn't show toasters anymore, which is incredibly sad. And I'm sorry that I had to do that to you, but alas. For anybody that's wondering, the toaster screensaver was called After Dark. It was part of a collection of screensavers and other weird little programming or programs from it was distributed in the 90s, I think. I remember it from when I was a kid, and I loved the toasters. Yeah. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes of this. I am going to open this up for questions. I know this. I'm expecting a lot of confusion because we just stuffed a lesson and a half to almost 2 lessons into a shorter time than is normally allocated for one lesson with 4Geeks. I should have probably been slightly less optimistic about how much I could fit into the time that I had. But yeah, I'm totally down for questions. I will stick around and answer them as best I can. And yeah, go ahead and either drop them in chat or you should be able to actually. Can you raise hands in Blue Jeans, or am I thinking one of the many conference softwares that I've used? I think that's Zoom. Well, if there aren't any questions off the top of people's heads, I'm going to go into some other resources that are available for learning JavaScript. So one, there are a bunch of free stuff, or there's a bunch of stuff that you can use to get you started on a project on the 4Geeks Academy GitHub. I mean, there's also 4Geeks Academy. I'm enjoying being a teacher with them a lot, and they've got a lot of really good material. Hi, Cat. You are a much better wall than you are a window. So, for example, if you come over to the 4Geeks Academy GitHub, and let's it'll be zoomed in enough, and then let's see, and you search for JavaScript, you'll see that they have a whole bunch of exercises. You'll probably want to start with the JavaScript beginner exercises tutorial. And this is another thing where you can run it in Gitpod. So let's start out by opening in the Gitpod. This will step you through a whole bunch of exercises, and it will actually stop to let you breathe, unlike me talking at you guys. And it runs something called LearnPack. Now, we use LearnPack pretty extensively. Oop, 1 second. It also auto plays a video. But yeah, it will. Let me zoom in for you guys. There. It'll just run you through a series of exercises and allow you to progress at your own pace. And on top of it, this is actively maintained by us and just a really useful tool. And moreover, it's interactive. So it's not just reading on a page or listening to somebody yap at you. That's something that we do a lot with our curriculum at 4Geeks. It's super interactive. And yeah. And I try not to yap at people for almost 2 hours straight. Oh, also these are self-grading. So this exercise, so and it's going to yell at me if I knocking things down again, cat. My cat's a little mad that I moved the cat bed off my desk. A little mad. I think I need to find space for it. But anyway, so these exercises, there will be a button with a check mark on it that if you mouse over it, it'll say test. Click that, and it'll test your code. And then down here in the terminal, if you're green, you're good. Also, up here, everything expected. And then you can click the next button. Yeah. There's also documentation that I make use of extensively is the MDN JavaScript documentation. Their MDN web docs are the Mozilla web docs. The Mozilla are the people that make that make Firefox. So they have, among other things, tutorials for complete beginners, guides to everything. They even go into details like, you know how I said that if you think of everything in JavaScript as an object, you will only be wrong in ways that don't matter. They actually go into more detail in that. And then, yeah, they separate it out by all sorts of, or by difficulty level. And then they have references for everything in the language. So, for example, this is the array. You guys have already seen arrays. Never use the array constructor unless you absolutely need to, by the way. Just make a new array. There are some intricacies to the array constructor that are interesting. So yeah, let's see, arrays. All arrays have the method at concat, which we went over, and a whole bunch of other things, including filter and map, which are super useful, and reduce. But yeah, so all this documentation tells you how the language works in more detail, as well as MDN shows lots of examples. I do not know how many hours I've spent looking at MDN's documentation on JavaScript. but the answer is way too many. Yeah, it's just tons of good documentation. I like the way that they write their documentation, which probably means that it might be a touch inside baseball, but and it's also super searchable. Yeah, they also have some web development tutorials and whatnot. So yeah, that is pretty much that. I'm going to toss. Nope, that's the Slack chat. I'm going to toss the GitHub for 4 Geeks Academy into the chat, along with the MDN JavaScript documentation. And yeah, there's also, I don't have the audio set up, but the coding train on YouTube this guy is just a pleasure to watch, and he does a lot of JavaScript stuff. So like the Start Learning Here playlist is a good place to start. This guy is also responsible for the library that I used to make the promo animation that got pasted all over 4Geek social media. That framework is called p5.js. And additionally, if you want to see that and how I made it, I have that as a repository. And additionally, you can go and you can look at it in the browser and then go back to GitHub. The repository for that is there. And if you want to poke around at that and mess around there, that is completely doable. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. I think that is about it. There's also 4Geeks Academy as a resource, and again, as was mentioned at the beginning, you can text the you're welcome, Joyce. Yeah, you can talk to a recruiter by texting success to 786-416-6640, and yeah. Oh. Well, I'm glad to have helped, and I'm sorry if I managed to make anybody even more confused than when you started. Oh, yes, sorry. Let me actually, I'm just going to copy the message from earlier in the chat. I am an incredibly big fan of copy and paste. If you didn't notice, because, well, I mean, you saw me typing and how often I forgot letters. Cool. Well, have a good, actually, let me stop sharing and have a good night, everybody. Mhm. Mhm.